Insightful analysis, bold comments, friendly debates. Find all that and more on RoundTable, where passion meets in-depth discussion and covers the hottest topics in China.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to RoundTable, coming to you live from Beijing. I'm your host, He Yang, joined by Lai Ming and Tony Reed. Good as always to have you, our dear listeners, with us. We have some fascinating topics for discussion today and every day. On today's program, recent research found out that Chinese middle-aged men drink and smoke the most out of all age groups. What's the reason behind that? And isn't it a given that drinking and smoking affects our health negatively? Why are folks in this cohort more prone to these indulgences? And there apparently really is an app for everything. Examination apps are designed to make the lives of teachers and students easier. Well, we'll talk about what it is and why has it backfired? You can find us on Apple Podcast at RoundTable China. Rate and review us. You can also send us an email, or what's even better, a voice question to EZFM at foxmail.com. We have a special segment on RoundTable called RoundTable's Heart to Heart. I think the title explains it all. That's when we answer questions from our listeners. So if you have a question that you want some exclusive and well-researched answers, well, send it to us and we'll do the hard lifting for you. And one thing to bear in mind, please, is that we like to play your voice question, your voice out on live radio. So please send a voice document, MP3 document to EZFM at foxmail.com. And first on today's show, recent research has shown that with growing consumption prowess of the Chinese people, expenditure on alcohol and cigarettes has also gone up, especially for men in the age bracket of 40 and 50. So let's look at the situation here first and break it down. Let's talk about the drinking situation first and then smoking. What is the general picture here?
Well, there's good news and bad news. The World Health Organization released the Global Status Report on Alcohol and Health 2018 this September, and it showed that the per capita consumption of alcohol drops in the world in 2016. But the situation was different in China. So anyway, Chinese people consumed more alcohol in 2016. They consumed 4.1 liter, 7.1 liter, and 7.2 liter of alcohol per person in 2005, 2010, and 2016, respectively. So we see a steady rise over the years, rising by 76%. And more Chinese drink and fewer have quit it. The report showed that the percentage of drinkers dropped from 45.1% in 2005 to 43% in 2016 in the world. That's not much. But in China, the percentage of drinkers rose from 48.2% in 2005 to 55.8% in 2016. And the percentage of the people who quitted drinking for good dropped from 50.9% in 2005 to 42.1% in 2016. The report also pointed out that the drinking rate in the West Pacific region rose from 51.5% in 2000 to 53.8% in 2016. And it turns out that Chinese people are the major contributor to the rising figure. In other regions, the ratio dropped from 54.4% in 2000 to 47.3% in 2016. So the only reason why the percentage of drinking in the West Pacific region rose between 2000 and 2016 was actually more Chinese people have taken up drinking.
Yeah, how would you make up these figures, Tony?
Oh, it's very interesting. I feel like a lot of media coverage and a lot of attention is given to young people and, the influences that they encounter when it comes to smoking. But I just find it very interesting that a lot of older people, in this case, middle-aged men, are finding smoking more appealing. And I just feel like I remember when I went to the Philippines and I saw these little advertisements, these ghastly advertisements where it would show a hole in someone's throat, and then it would show like these different cancers coming out of people's stomach, and it's like, what is that? And there are these advertisements to prevent smoking, and it just doesn't seem to be working. It seems like people still tend to smoke. And so, according to the World Health Organization in a recent report, a male Chinese over 15 consumed about 11.7 liters of alcohol on average in 2016, which is a slight raise from 2010. But the figure for females was only about 2.5 liters, which isn't too bad. It's a slight decrease from 2010. However, smoking in 2013, 47.2% of Chinese men smoked, which is a pretty large figure. And for women, it's about 2.7. So it seems like smoking is starting to become, well, I feel like it's always been an issue, especially in the United States, but it seems to be, as time goes on, a lot more Chinese tend to be smoking. But the figures, are continually rising, especially as people get older. The smoking rate and the drinking rate in males rise and reach its peak around the ages of between 40 and 49 years old. In 2012, the number of drinkers took up 53.9% of the Chinese male population in the 20s. And the figure rose to about 63.7% in the 40s and dropped to about 40.3% in the 70s. So this age of around 50 seems to be where a lot of people take on this heavy drinking and heavy smoking. And I would imagine that there's a lot of factors involved here in why a lot of people are taking this up.
Yeah, this is interesting that that drinking and smoking have been put in juxtaposition for analysis in this research as well. I guess these are the two top vices that people are surveying, and they're not the kind of bad habits, or some people don't see it as bad. And certainly you don't see negative consequences immediately.
It makes kind of sense here in China, because we have an idiom that's called 烟酒不分家. That means
really?
Cigarettes and alcohol, they belong to the same family. They should not be separated.
Oh, no.
A lot of my friends who smoke after drinking says, he usually doesn't smoke, and the only times he smokes is after he gets drunk. And it's almost as if people are looking
I've heard of that too.
Yep.
It's almost as if people are looking for excuses to sort of, they already know that it's bad to be smoking, but then nonetheless, when they're drunk and then they lose their self-control, they feel like it's the time. Now is the best time than ever to sort of try smoking and indulge in
Best time ever.
Best time ever.
Yeah,
quote unquote.
It's very interesting that I have friends like that too. It's like they don't drink and they don't smoke actually, but when they go out and they have these gatherings with friends, they have a few drinks and everyone's smoking. Hey, why not? I'll just have a cigarette too. It's it's like you're blending into your environment. It's a very strange phenomenon.
And it really makes a sense for me too. I mean, the only times I managed to smoke a cigarette were the times when I was really drunk. Other times when I was sober, I couldn't handle the smoke sipping into my eyes. I get water in my eyes or tears in my eyes. So I just don't know how I can then pull off smoking, and how those people who are maybe smoking maybe 10 packs a day, how they do that.
Yeah, smoking like a chimney. That, I wonder what's the color of that person's lung. But actually, But you also get these survivor stories of people having really good genes. They're almost immune to us. Yeah, but I question the validity of that though. But Liming, a friend told me that having a ciggy after a few glasses of wine or whatever alcohol could add to the buzz, and that's why some people do it. But a friend said that. And anyhow, back to this research paper, as just looking at just plowing through all this the figures that you guys cited, one thing that really stood out for me is that I think our attention have often been diverted, I suppose, to, there are some ladies now that are smoking. There are some younger teenagers. They're exposed to bad content or glorified smoking scenes or of sort in media, and they're smoking, they're experimenting, blah, blah, blah. But by the look of it, if we look at evidence, it seems to be the let's say the middle-aged men, those in this age cohort of 50 to 49.
50.
Yeah.
40 to
and they're
49.
the major force behind consumption for alcohol and cigarettes here in China. So let's look at this group of people then. Why is it that they have such a high rate of smoking and drinking?
Well,
I don't know. I kind of feel like it could possibly be, as they get older, they earn a little bit more money, which enables them to, indulge a little bit more, because, let's face it, a pack of cigarettes aren't what they used to be. They're quite expensive. So a little bit more money, a little bit more freedom with how they can spend it. And also when people get a bit older in their 50s, they face a bit more pressures from life and work, and this could be a bit of an escape, so to speak. And I feel people in this age group are usually in the dominating status in the family, which means, there may be no more people that can control them and tell them what to do. Hey, this, you really should cut back on that. And, and as a 40 or 50-year-old man, no one's really going to tell you what to do. So, I feel like that could possibly be a reason why this age group may smoke a bit more than others.
Makes a little sense. I don't mean to sound sarcastic or ironic, but so for a lot of people who are in their 40s or who are between 40 and 49, they are probably facing the midlife crisis. They probably have realized that they're not going to make a dent in history. They probably are not going to get that promotion they've always wanted, and they
life seems to
be
be less filled with wonders.
Yeah, they probably don't know how to have fun except to indulge in those vices like you just mentioned.
Well, I also think there's another factor that's kind of important, and I think that's nicotine. I think nicotine is more addictive than heroin, and doctors rank nicotine.
Who said that?
Well, this was according to the CDC. It says that it's more addictive than heroin, and doctors rank nicotine ahead of alcohol and cocaine in terms of dependence. The nicotine triggers the smoker's brain to be more efficient in processing information. So this is probably why a lot of people feel that they can think when they smoke. Furthermore, nicotine also reduces anxiety and induces euphoria, which is that, that feeling of excitement and intense feelings of being happy. So researchers have also shown that nicotine stimulates alertness and arousal and sedation and relaxed feelings based off of the dose of, the amount of nicotine that you're taking in. So there are some benefits here. People can feel relaxed from stress from work, and they have this feeling of being, euphoric, happy, but also they feel, very relaxed but aroused. They can still get things done. So it seems like this type of drug can really help people who have a very high stress level.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I wonder. Of course, I know that nicotine has that addiction side in it, but I don't know what is the dosage that is put in cigarettes, and if it's I guess I don't have the detailed studies in that, but certainly I think addiction could be one of the factors in why people continue to smoke, because I think we can sort of extrapolate from the figures is that it's more men than women, obviously, but they start smoking probably a while back, and
yes,
maybe they've quitted successfully or failed along the way or whatever it is, and then it's towards midlife, 40 to 49. That's when maybe more of these guys are smoking, and there's these people are not only the dominating figure at home for a lot of the families, I suppose, but also I think more I think easy to see in society is that they are in the dominant position in the office in society. And who's going to tell your leader off to put that out? And so I guess in many ways, these guys can get away with it.
Yes, social smoking and social drinking could be could play a very important part in getting people to pick up those bad habits. I mean, I remember specifically when I was a kid. I mean, the adults who were smoking when I was a kid are probably between the age of 40 and 49. I think I specifically remember them passing cigarettes when they met each other. And I, as a result, I also picked up that habit, even though I don't smoke. Sometimes, under certain circumstances, say when I hire a worker sort of to help me do some landscape improvement at home, I would certainly go to one of the cigarette stores and get a pack of cigarettes so that I could just give it to them as a nice gesture, so that they would pay more attention to their work. And also when it comes to the drinking, that's the case too. I mean, when you are not drinking, I mean, back in the days, maybe in the 1980s, in the 1990s, China was not as developed a country as it is now, and as such, people were not necessarily as educated, or they certainly didn't know enough about the harms of drinking or alcohol or cigarette. And as such, they sort of, and also because the lack of development in the society, there wasn't specifically a trust building mechanism in the society. When you want to do business, when you run into a stranger in business, how do you get to know them but to sort of judge their character by how they behave? And in many cases, when Chinese people believe 酒品 or the personality that or the manners that a person exhibits while drinking on the dinner table are probably going to reflect how they behave in the society under normal circumstances. So when we didn't have such a trust building mechanism, when a lot of people were probably not educated enough to know the harms or to know the good trustworthy person from the not trustworthy persons, they sort of relied on table manners to tell, or adherence to social protocols to tell whether this person is trustworthy or not. Nowadays, I can totally see how young people are shying away from taking up those bad habits. For one thing, a lot of people are better educated, and they have the means to tell whether, at least you can tell that this person has received a good education has had a good education background. From intelligently, he's trustworthy. And then there are other ways, for instance, emails, WeChats. There are other ways of communication where you can determine whether this person is trustworthy or not. And also, all sorts of businesses have been developed. I know that there are companies that can help you look into actually the background of another company. For instance, it's called 天眼查. So there are websites that you can pay membership fee to that would allow you access to information, business information or registration certification information of a certain company. There are certainly a wider range of choices that you can use to get to know another person or another company when you are sort of 行走江湖, walking in the society and just get in contact with all kinds of strange people.
That's so interesting. But Liming, I suppose that there has been a lot of social change going on regarding the smoking and drinking, if there is a culture, so to speak, of it. Now, for example, you would possibly offer the cigarette to the construction worker or whoever, the 师傅 that you've employed to come in and help you out with plumbing or around the house, that kind of thing. But you wouldn't offer a cigarette to our boss or our boss's boss, right?
I wouldn't feign that hospitality before I know whether they smoke or not.
Exactly.
Whereas there's a higher percentage of workers who have the habit of smoking or drinking.
Yeah, so I think there is that change, I would say, because remember in these photos taken of Chairman Mao and Deng Xiaoping, these great figures
of the Republic.
Yes, of China, there were pictures of them smoking when they were meeting up with foreign dignitaries. But now you don't ever see that because the social etiquette, the custom, the culture has changed dramatically. And so I think there is that going on, but that doesn't mask the fact that sales for cigarettes is still going up, although it's not skyrocketing, but it's sort of remained in a pretty high level, and that hasn't really budged much in the last decade or so. So that's one thing. And regarding drinking, I think there's change, but some things still seem to remain the same. This is my observation, Liming. So you say that there are plenty of other tools nowadays that people can employ to try to really find out what this person is about. And yeah, but there's still the saying that still runs true today that the father-in-law would most likely and want to take the son-in-law or the fiance of his daughter out for a drink and get that dude drunk to see his true colors. What is this guy's real character about? And I think, so sometimes it's about trying to see this person's true colors. It's not necessarily about the assets of the company or whatever it is, but it's like you want to establish a close relationship and really get to know this person without all the civilized facade and that kind of thing.
But that's not rational, and that irrational thinking still betrays the stage of underdevelopment. And I think as China moves on, I mean, certainly if you look at film and TV series and films and those products, you can see how smoking and drinking has been portrayed in different light. I specifically remember when I was a kid, I watched those feature films about revolutionary forefathers who founded this republic, and there was a scene showing them attending a military meeting and trying to sort of brainstorm a strategy. And the way they portrayed that scene was that they portrayed everybody smoking, and the scene was all about the smoke encompassing the entire room. And then after the smoke dissipates, then the leaders have conceived a grand strategy, and that's how they portrayed it. And nowadays, there are, although we are complaining that maybe China hasn't done enough in discouraging people from those bad habits, there are policies or measures that have been ruled out. Mm-hmm. For instance, we can no longer, as often as we used to, watch people smoking. At least it's not openly recommended to young people. You don't see that as often as we used to.
Well, the smoking ban indoors has been stricter than ever. Although you can still see people who are breaking the rules sometimes, but
going in the bathroom.
Oh yeah, but certainly I think the efforts in the smoking ban seems to be improving, but
and also when you there's a tax hike. It's really expensive to buy cigarettes now. At least and I feel like in the United States, it's for most people this has been a reason for a significant decline in people buying cigarettes is because it's so expensive. It's like 3 to 4 times it was 15 years ago. So a lot of people are going places, for example, like an Indian reservation where there's no tax, and they'll try to buy them there. But I mean, it's far and it's not very accessible. So, but yeah, tax hikes are definitely something that I think affects people's wallet. And if people can't afford to smoke, then they're going to smoke a little bit less.
Yeah, a few years back when I was doing a report on smoking in China, and actually came into this information actually that a lot of Chinese people who smoke, they probably smoke a pack of cigarettes worth less than 10 yuan, and so they are pretty sensitive to price fluctuations. But then honestly, I tend to think that this argument could be used by cigarette companies or the state that's looking to collect more taxes from the industry. I don't think by raising the price or the cost of smoking, that's going to change the situation dramatically. Because for one thing, Tony, you just mentioned the magic, or I wouldn't say magic, that's the wrong word, the effect of nicotine that can affect on a person that's smoking. So is it really hard Is it really going to play a part in deterring people by raising the price when they are so reliant on nicotine? I don't know.
Well, I think maybe it depends on how expensive is this sin tax. Because we know in China in 2015, there was a regulation that increased the tax on cigarettes. And then in the 2 years after that, we saw small dips in the sales. But now, sales seems to be going up. We'll be back after the break with more Roundtable.
可以从众追随
Informed opinion and heated debate. Find out what's got China talking and join us for your roundtable discussion.
You're listening to Roundtable with myself, He Yang, joined by Tony Reed and Lai Ming. Coming up, there apparently really is an app for everything. Examination apps are designed to make the lives of teachers and students easier. But why has it backfired? And so much of our daily activity is documented on our smartphone. Is it ever a good idea to snoop or check your significant other's smartphone? Well, back in the day, we talked about emails. Would you be given access to the email account of your significant other? But now, it's the smartphone. And if you are listening to our show on demand, you can find us on Roundtable China on Apple Podcast and 2 apps where you can check us out. That's the 轻松调频 app and China Plus app. And now on Roundtable. Smartphones are a powerful tool in our lives, but they're only as useful as the apps we install on them. When it comes to drawing up examination questions and marking papers as such, apps have been developed to improve the lives of teachers and students. But are they really helpful on every and any occasion? Today on Roundtable, let's look at some apps, and apparently they've become the pain in neck for many parents and students. So what exactly are we talking about here, Lai Mei? Examination apps?
Examination apps, yes. Actually, apps that will help teachers grade the examination papers and also help them draft the examination beforehand, of course. So recently, parents in Bozhou, Anhui province, lodged a complaint to reporters saying they had been asked to install a score finder application on their phones. And with the application, the parents can find out the test results of the kids for free. The parents can also pay 10 yuan every test to see the rankings and find out where the kids are compared to other students who took the same test. And paying users can also read analytical reports on the test results. For instance, how many students have failed to answer the first question and how many have passed the second, that sort of thing. Now, since the kids have taken are taking more than 10 tests every year, many parents choose to pay 100 yuan for a 1-year membership in order to save money, because let's say they take 12 tests and the parents choose to pay 10 yuan for every test, and that's 120. So
buy 10, get 2 free.
There's got to be more than 12, I suppose. But that's when things get messy, because the teachers may recommend this application for this semester and then a different application come the next semester. And therefore, when in fact a student may be taking, say, 15 tests a year, and the parents think, oh, it's a deal. If I pay 100 yuan on this application, I get 15 times. But little did they know, perhaps their kids only took 7 tests in the first semester, and in the second semester of the year, the teacher recommended a different app. And there goes that 100 yuan for only 7 tests. Okay,
so then that's paying too much for nothing, and parents are left in a certainly unfavorable position.
So just so I get this right, so parents are paying about 100 kwai for an app where they can see their children's progress in school. And before that year is up, or before the semester is finished, they change the app. And then they recommend another one. And do they get a discount on the next one, or is it
No.
no discount? You got to start. You got to have another membership, and then that way you can get the same services that the other app was giving.
Well, sometimes that happens, but essentially this is about teachers, well, making their parents and students, possibly too, signing up for these so-called examination apps. But it's interesting that, so they're buying examination papers from one company, from this app company, right?
Well, they're not buying per se, because the teachers can use those applications to draft the examination paper.
See.
I mean, the questions they still have to come up with by themselves, the teachers.
Okay.
So the
Right.
teachers will have the questions ready. They'll upload the questions to the application, and the application will generate the test, the
Results.
examination papers. The papers, because they have to be generated by the application so that they can be rated by the examination. Otherwise, if you are made of the wrong caliber, then it's difficult for the application to tell or to grade.
So hold on. When the students are writing the examination papers, like answering the questions, are they doing that electronically, or is the results I guess the results are uploaded
results
to...
are
Yeah, I would assume the teachers would have to upload, scan, or photocopy or
Right.
anything.
Not digitalized enough, I guess.
No,
but one
not
thing this can avoid, I'm just trying to find out if there's any advantages with this, is that kids can no longer forge a higher grade than what they actually achieved for their parents to know. Because now parents just get it from the teacher de facto. Because you
From
just
the
check the
application.
app.
From the application.
Yeah, because you're
That
checking the
is-
app.
I just feel like that's a nightmare. I mean, if I was to score badly on a test and my parents get this message on their phone where it shows my score immediately, I think that's. I don't think that that's right.
So in other words, if you get a 9 for your math test and you add a 0 after that 9, you maybe be able to fool your parents who aren't paying attention to,
Back in the old
Jeez.
days,
and you say, okay, the 90.
and now that is no longer the case. You don't get a chance. And another thing, Liming, that I wonder could strike a heavy blow on my confidence if I'm a kid that's not doing particularly well in school, is that there's also the data analysis part of this app, right? So if I used to be ranked bottom in my class, okay, I cry a couple of tears, go home, crawl into a little ball. But now with this data analysis, I find out that I'm also at the bottom of my district, my school district, right?
I'm not sure how widely these applications are introduced into different regions, but I suppose that the safe thing is to say is that at least the parents will be able to know how well you performed vis-a-vis your fellow classmates in the same school.
So you'd be able to know that. But yeah, Tony, what do you think about all of this? Now the data's been crunched, so a fuller picture of how well you do, and maybe a little bit more data analysis is provided to understand all of this. Is it a good thing or not so good?
Well, I was not exactly an A student in school, so for me, it was very important that when I didn't do well on the test, that I could actually see the test paper and see some of the mistakes I've made, and also listen to or read the teacher's comments. But from what I'm reading here, it doesn't seem that the test sheets don't actually have any teacher's notes. So really, after you take the exam, your score is loaded into the app and it's viewable, and you don't really get to know what exactly you did wrong. And for me, that was really important. Sometimes, especially if there was a portion where you had to write an essay or explain something, it's important to see what I did right, what I did wrong, and get some notes from the teacher. But it doesn't seem like that's available, so I think that would be a bit of a challenge for me.
Well, if the examination paper isn't graded by the teacher sort of by hand, then of course there are no notes on the examination paper after you get it. But you win some and you lose some because this application they certainly they have some powerful functionality buried within, because the application allows you to sort of to analyze the results of all students that have taken the test. For instance, they could tell you how many students have failed to answer the first question, and is kind of helpful to teachers when they can know that exactly how many students have failed at the first question, and therefore the teachers will be able to know that maybe I should beef up on this segment of teaching, and so all my students can catch up. But this also makes it very competitive, and this also reminds me of a software that a lot of people used to install on their PC. They probably still have it on the PC. It's called 360. It's a safety guard or something, and that upon rebooting, it tells you that it has taken you like a minute and 30 seconds to reboot your computer, and in this you've beaten like 70% of other users. So it's very competitive. And this application is telling you, and you've scored, you've got this question right, and therefore you have beaten 90% of your fellow classmates.
Yeah.
It's making it very competitive.
And also, like, if I'm the super dem student in the classroom, oops, I used to think that, okay, I'm just not doing well, maybe in this group of people that I physically see, but now possibly that is a huge, blow on my self-confidence, maybe, when I realize that, oh, well, I am, at the bottom of a bigger pool of contestants.
I think what's also interesting, I'm wondering if other students are able to see these results as well, because if other students can see how others are performing, I think that, we recently just talked about, cyberbullying and, how malicious children can be in this type of environment, especially when you promote competitiveness. And I feel that perhaps making everyone's scores available for everyone could cause some other potential problems in that type of setting.
Well, it's not available to everyone. It's available only to parents who choose to pay 10 yuan each time, or 100 yuan annual fee.
Yeah.
So I think, yes, like we mentioned earlier, it is creating undue pressure on students, no matter whether it is being shared for free to the parents or it is shared among all students. Certainly, I think that's why the Education Authority in China have banned teachers and schools from drafting that ranking and openly made it public to students and parents. But nowadays, certainly the schools are obeying, the schools are obeying this regulation, but look, they found innovative ways to make money, and there are third-party companies have sort of tapped into the curiosity of parents, to find out how well their kids are performing, and they are making profit out of it.
Well, about the ranking thing, I have something to say here. That is, okay, it's obvious in the China's top educational authorities are saying that no ranking. This encourages like cutthroat competition.
Right.
We don't want our young kids to have a terrible childhood, or as they're pursuing their education, we don't want that added pressure when already it's stressful enough. But because we all know that there is that ultimate exam that happens usually when you're 18, and that doesn't change. So, and even without, let's say if we take that out of the equation for a second, knowing where you rank more or less, knowing how well you do amongst a group of people, isn't that kind of an incentive or a way to motivate people? Tony, what do you think?
I agree. I think that it's definitely a great way to motivate people, and it's good to see where you stand among your classmates. But I think maybe every test might be a bit much. I think perhaps at the end of the year, it may be a good idea to be able to see where you rank. But every test, I think that, again, and if parents have access to this information, what's to stop them from printing that out and giving it to their child and showing them, hey, this is where you are?
I know.
And then what's to stop that child from taking that to school and showing, oh, hey, look, this is where my friend is. He's way at the bottom of the totem
You don't
pole.
get that information.
But the parents do.
No, the parents don't get information of other kids. They only get their kids' information, where their kids stand
just where
within everybody.
Within everyone's.
Yes.
Okay. That's. I think that's very important.
Yeah. And also, another major aspect of this, and also I think a reason why it's getting so much flack, is that a teacher or a group of teachers can just easily tell the parents that you need to spend money on one product. What's going on there? That sounds like major mismanagement.
Yeah, sounds a little fishy to me because I'm not sure. There's no evidence to prove that the teachers are getting money from the third-party companies, from the application companies, but it certainly is not making them look nice. I mean, they should not find themselves associated to companies that's making profit. I mean, there are regulations on this too. But
yeah,
if I were a teacher, I would stay away from this.
And this is just opening, I think, for the teachers, this hole for attack. Because we know that for textbooks, for example, in our country, schools need to follow to buy certain textbooks that are decided by the Educational Bureau. And they can't just... So, yeah, there isn't that much autonomy in a way in the classroom because... Well, there is the good side of it. That is, well, to try to avoid corruption. And but when it comes to these apps, this is the area of void when it comes to supervision.
It seems like it would be a bit easier to just have a standardized app for all schools. That way, there's no competition and it doesn't change every year. That there's one app, perhaps something that's, state-owned, where they can monitor how everyone is doing, and there's certain restrictions on what you have access to. I mean, that way it just seems like it would be less of a commercial opportunity, and there would be a lot less competitors, and it would be more standardized.
Well, what do you think about that?
Well, I think that is a very good proposal, but one that may not apply to China, which is such a large country. Even when we talk about the all-important national college entrance examination, we often don't realize that maybe for different parts of the country they are actually doing it with different test papers, and actually different parts of the country they follow different outlines or structure or different courses. Actually, we have different demands. I mean, in the southeastern part of the country where economy is much more developed, obviously where education resources is much more advanced, certainly the problems can be more difficult. Whereas in more remote part of the country, the problems must be sort of tuned down a little bit to allow a wider access, to allow more kids to get access to college education. So this idea of a nationwide application that would apply to all schools across China, it is ideal. It is going to be useful in an ideal situation, but you still have to account for the massive disparity or regional differences between different parts of the country.
But what about just city or district-wide? Yeah. But then that must be, I think, a fierce bid amongst some companies. And that is, well, for it to be so widely implemented, it would also require the government, I think, to do enough research on that these families all have smartphones. Because, like Lemmy said, that there are areas in China that are still struggling with maybe feeding the kids, and the smartphone
take
would
it for
truly
granted
be a
that
luxury.
Everybody maybe already have a smartphone in this country, but maybe that's not the case, and maybe for certain families getting a smartphone is just too much.
Okay, the last question regarding this topic is, guys, do you think it's necessary to involve an app into the process of setting up examination papers, or more importantly, about the results?
I think I'm a bit biased because I'm a bit older, so I think that, perhaps again, at the end of every semester or term, that these results could be printed out or sent to, via mail, or I think there's a different way that can be, we can go about it as opposed to just using, an app.
Well, I think the application could be more powerful. I mean, for now, we can tell the big data mining technology has allowed teachers to know how many students have failed at one examination and how many students have failed at one problem. That already is useful to a lot of students, to a lot of teachers. And also think of the time that these applications can save for the teachers, times that teachers can nonetheless spend on knowing each student more carefully and maybe coming up with a different strategy or different approach to sort of improving the grades of each individual students. Certainly a kind of technological advancement that could boost efficiency in any field, I'm certainly welcome to that.
Well, also, in order to make that happen, you need to feed in more data. Do you want to do that? Also another aspect of this. You're listening to Roundtable. Coming up next, so much of our daily activity is documented on our smartphone. So is it ever a good idea to snoop or check your significant other's smartphone? Stay with us to find out more on that.
Looking for passion? How about fiery debate? Want to hear about current events in China from different perspectives? Then tune in to Roundtable, where East meets West and understanding is the goal.
It's the hour of Roundtable with myself, He Yang, Lai Ming, and Tony Reed. Yeah, now we know that teachers and students are using their smartphone apps to draw up examination papers and check results and all that. So, okay, when the smartphone or tablet is just laying around in the household and your significant other just walks by, haven't that person at some point wondered, so intrigued, I'd like to check out what my partner is doing or have done on that digital device? So there has been this recent report in the U.S. about the situation. Let's look at what the Americans feel about checking the smartphones of their significant other.
Well, according to a 2014 survey from an antivirus software company, Avast, it asked about 9,202 men and women in committed relationships whether or not they secretly checked their partner's smartphone, and nearly 1 in 5 men and 1 in 4 women said yes. The motives, however, varied by gender. The number one reason that men said they snooped, which was about 26%, was because they suspected their partner was cheating on them. Another 24% said that they did it because they were just simply nosy, and 12% said that they wanted to catch their significant other in a lie. Women, on the other hand, were motivated more by curiosity. 30% said that they snooped because they were nosy, and 21% suspected their significant other was cheating, and 14% wanted to catch their significant other in a lie as well. And for many, the risk was worth the reward. 71% of women and 53% of men said they found evidence of cheating or lying by checking their significant other's phone. So it's, I think that a lot of people have different reasons for wanting to look at their phone. And I think the biggest one is, trust. And I actually had this situation happen in my life. A couple years ago, I was dating someone and I stepped out of the room to go cook something, and I came back and the mood was completely different. And I was trying to figure out what's wrong. And then she eventually told me that she had checked my phone and there were some other messages from women, and she made her uncomfortable. And the whole time I couldn't just stop thinking, like, you checked my phone. I can't believe you did that. That was the only thing that I can think of. And I just felt really betrayed by that.
If she asked for permission, would you feel differently about it?
Well, yeah. If they ask permission, it would be. Well, honestly, I don't know if I would feel better about it. I would probably allow her to look at the messages. But
you would?
I would, yeah. at that time I didn't have anything to hide, but the feeling that, you're asking to look at it. I mean, I wouldn't do that because I trust the person that I'm with. And I think that's probably one of the biggest reasons or why people, snoop on others is there's obviously a lack of trust somewhere in the relationship.
Okay, I know Limey have something to say, but can I just jump in quickly here? Because one thing I found hugely interesting, cited by Tony just now, that women check, the majority of women that said yes, they checked the phone, is that we're curious. It's not like we don't trust you. We just are fascinated by what you're doing. Because so much of our daily activity is documented on and reported on the smartphone. So it's not like, he's cheating on me, I want to find out about that. It's more like, it's this itchy feeling that you want to know about another person.
I almost link curiosity with doubt and lack of trust here. I think that, if you're curious about someone's life, you could just simply ask them.
Well,
and if you had that trust in that person, then the person would just simply tell you what they did. But to just go behind their back and do it, there's definitely curiosity there, but it's more of this endangerment. Like, am I at risk? Is this person, am I adequate enough?
Well, if we were to trust the information that Tony just shared about the survey conducted by this company, then I suppose really we can't really blame people in many cases for wanting to spy on a significant other, because like Tony said, 71% of women and 53% of men said they found evidence of cheating or lying by checking their significant other's phone. That means curious or not, they probably are already getting traces of questionable behavior on the part of their significant other, and they just wanted to confirm whatever they are suspecting. And in most cases, 71% and 53% of the cases, they got what they wanted. They got proof that they've been lied to or they've been cheated on.
But is that how you want to find out? I mean, I'm a firm advocate of things will eventually come out with enough time. If your significant other has another partner, you'll eventually find out that this is happening. But to do it in a deceptive way where you're going and you're looking through their things, how are you going to approach that person when you find this information? So it's almost like two parties are at fault here.
Yeah.
Who would you rather be, being caught by surprise or taking proactive action to find out? I know. What I'm saying is that actually there are questionable behaviors. There are probably problems to begin with for somebody who gets so curious about the significant other's behavior. And what I'm saying is that maybe there's a lack of trust building process, or maybe there certainly is a lack of trust. I mean, if your significant other want to know more about you, shouldn't they just simply ask? Shouldn't you guys just talk?
Well,
why spy on your smartphone? Why just snoop?
Okay, if the other party is providing enough trust, he's not flirting with women, not when I can see him, not when I can't see him, then okay, that would make me feel better about it. But if I'm not so sure about it, oh man, it's a major thing that's kind of bugging you.
But that may not be his fault. It could be something that you experienced in your previous relationship that you bring into your current one.
And there's another thing called self-fulfilled prophecy. So if you just constantly dig for the thing you want to see, you might get it. That's it for today's Roundtable. Bye-bye, everybody.